Hi, I'm Dave Taylor with Reichert Technologies, and in this video we're going to talk about the Ocular Response Analyzer. We'll discuss use of the device in clinical practice, and we'll talk about the interpretation of the measurement values it delivers. You can visit Reichert.com for more information about the Ocular Response Analyzer or any Reichert products. The Ocular Response Analyzer should be positioned on an adjustable height instrument table. In addition, it's a good idea to have an adjustable height patient seat. It's really important that the patient can get comfortably in front of the instrument at the proper height. The patient shouldn't need to strain to reach the instrument or crouch down to get in front of the instrument, as posture can affect the measurement values that the device delivers. You also want to make sure that you don't want to put the instrument in front of any bright sources of light, such as an open window, or any other instruments in your practice that may generate infrared light, as infrared is used in the measurement process of the Ocular Response Analyzer. To power the instrument, you simply plug the cord into the receptacle on the underside of the instrument, and then you can route the cord anywhere you'd like to. And there's a power switch right here on the side of the device. Before using the Ocular Response Analyzer, there are a number of menu options that you may wish to customize, and you can access those right here by pressing the Setup menu icon. We'll talk primarily about these top three menu items. If you go to the tonometer setup menu, you can set the pressure, millimeters of mercury or kilopascals. The default is millimeters of mercury. For the multi-measure mode, you can choose 3 measurements or 4 measurements, and 3 is the default. And for the averaging system, you can choose our intelligent averaging system, which is the default, or straight averaging. And we'll talk more about that later. Here on the general setup menu, you can choose the language. You can choose to turn the touch tone on or off, a sleep timer, number of minutes, brightness of the screen, and the eye title, whether you want it to read right or left or ODOS. On the printout setup, here's where you choose the date format that you like, the time format, actually set the date and time, and you can also enter your practice name, which will appear on the printout. Here's the primary user interface, and I'll describe the buttons on the screen. This is the menu button that we were just in. This is a demo measurement button, so you can demonstrate what the measurement feels like to your patient. This is the single measure button, and this is the multi-measure button. And here on the screen, the measurements will be displayed for the left eye and the right eye, and the blue color indicates which eye you are currently measuring. Up at the top also you can see that there are 3 small icons that look like an eye, and that tells you how many measurements you've made on each eye. Let's talk for a moment about how to introduce Ocular Response Analyzer technology to your patients. The device uses an air pulse to deform the cornea to make its measurements. And this is similar to what we call a non-contact tonometer that's been on the market for about 40 years. However, the way we collect the data and the way we analyze the signal is dramatically different from what was done with those old non-contact tonometers. In fact, we're actually making measurements that weren't previously available that are extremely important to diagnosing and managing glaucoma. So we call this a new purpose for the puff, and it's important for you to explain to your patients that this isn't the same old puff test. And actually, we have a quick reference card that comes with the instrument that has a small script on it that you can use to explain this to your patients. Let's talk for a few moments about patient alignment and measurement. First, before the patient sits in front of the instrument, I think it's important to ask them to remove their contact lenses if they're wearing any. Contact lens materials can affect the accuracy of the measurements. You want to make sure you have the table set at the proper height and the patient stool set at the proper height. The device features a left-right sliding forehead rest. The instrument screen will show you which eye is about to be measured. When you're ready to make a measurement, you simply invite the patient to bring their head forward and position their forehead directly against this rubber pad in the center of the headrest. There's some canthus marks here on the side that should help you make sure that the instrument is at the proper height. So when you're ready to make a measurement, I ask the patient to blink a few times, keep both eyes open wide, and then I press the measure button. Now, blinking helps to make sure that there is a nice glossy coat of tear film on the corneas, which is helpful for the measurement process, and keeping both eyes open is also helpful so that the patient doesn't squint. The patient's going to be looking at a fixation target, which is a series of red LEDs with a green LED in the center. I don't ask the patient to differentiate between the green and the red LED because when you press the measure button, the only thing that will remain illuminated is the green LED, and that's the primary fixation target. I simply ask the patient if they see any lights, and if they do, they're in the ballpark and the auto alignment system is going to automatically align to the eye and measure. So my patient's now in position, and I'm going to ask again, do you see some lights?
Yes.
Great. I want you to go ahead and blink a few times for me. Now keep both eyes wide open and look at the green light when you see it. After you've completed the first measurement, when you're ready to measure the other eye, you simply slide the forehead rest over and repeat the process. I'm going to ask you to back up just 1 second here. Pull that over and then bring your head straight back forward again like before. Blink a few times for me, keep both eyes wide open, and look at that green light again. When you're making a measurement, if the patient is out of position, for example too high, the instrument will attempt to make a measurement and will quickly report to you what the problem is. In this example here, our patient is positioned too high, the instrument attempts to make a measurement and very quickly says, patient too high. It would also say patient too far left, too far right, patient too low, patient too far away, or patient too close. So simply read the result on the screen if the measurement isn't made and adjust the position of the patient accordingly and make another measurement. Let's talk for a few moments about the Ocular Response Analyzer waveform score and the use of averaging in the Ocular Response Analyzer. The waveform score is a tool that's used as a reliability index. It should help you determine if you've made a good measurement or a not so good measurement, very much like a signal strength indicator on an OCT. It's on a scale of 0 to 10, and the higher the number, the more reliable the measurement data are. In this example, we have a waveform score of 7.9 on the left eye and 7.3 on the right eye. Both of those are actually very good waveform scores. Kind of use 6 as a rule of thumb, good waveform score or not so good waveform score. If you get waveform scores of 6 or higher, those should be regarded as good measurements. 6 and lower, you may want to consider taking additional measurements. Patients that have had recent ocular surgery or refractive surgery, or patients who have pathology such as keratoconus or Fuchs dystrophy, these are the types of patients that may generate low waveform scores and that there may be nothing you can do about it. In these cases, I advise you to take multiple measurements and let the instrument's intelligent averaging system average the best quality measurements available. If you make 3 measurements in a row with the instrument and you get a waveform score of 3, 7, and 8, it's only going to measure the 7 and 8. That's how the intelligent averaging system works. So for the sake of the video, let's measure this patient again. Let's say I'm not so happy with that 7.3 waveform score on the right eye. I'm going to invite my patient to come forward again. Put your head right on that comfortable rubber forehead rest. You see some lights again?
Yes, good.
Great. Blink a few times. Keep both eyes nice and wide open for me and look at that green light. Now we've got a waveform of 9.3, waveform score of 9.3 on the right eye. So a 9.3 on the right eye, a 7.9 on the left eye. I'm very happy with those measurements. This should be reliable data. The next thing I'll look at is the other numbers, the IOPs and the corneal hysteresis measurement, and I'll look for any asymmetry that might be concerning to me. Generally, when you get good waveform scores, the right and the left eye symmetry should be acceptable. If you see something that's concerning to you, it never hurts to take additional measurements. There are a number of factors, such as the ocular pulse. Every time the heart beats, the pressure in the eye changes by a few millimeters of mercury. These things can affect the repeatability or the symmetry of the measurements. So when in doubt, make additional measurements. Look at the waveform score, make sure it's an acceptable waveform score, and let the instrument's intelligent averaging system do its job. Let's talk about the measurement values and the clinical interpretation of the measurement values on the screen. Here we have an example where we've got a waveform score of 8.3, so I'm confident this is good data. Let's move up to the IOP-G. The G in IOP-G stands for Goldman. So this is a pressure measurement that is essentially a Goldman equivalent. This is a measurement value that reflects what you would expect to see if you were to measure this patient at this point in time with a Goldman tonometer. Highly correlated with Goldman tonometry, affected by the cornea in a similar way to a Goldman tonometer. While we're talking about intraocular pressure, let's move up here to IOP-CC. The CC stands for corneal compensated. IOP-CC is a pressure measurement that is designed specifically to overcome differences in biomechanics of the cornea. So this is a measurement that has been shown to be closer to the true intraocular pressure, less affected by corneal properties than Goldmann or other methods of tonometry. And it's important to note that this is less affected by corneal biomechanical bending characteristics. This is not just a thickness adjustment algorithm. This is a patented Reichert process that only the ocular response analyzer can deliver. So this measurement has been shown to be closer to the true intraocular pressure and actually shown to be a better indication of glaucoma visual field damage than measurements of Goldmann. Now let's look in the middle here at corneal hysteresis, CH. Perhaps the most important number on the screen. Corneal hysteresis is an indication of the biomechanical properties of the cornea. It's related to the viscoelasticity of the cornea, and since the eyeball is connective tissue, this corneal measurement is reflective of the condition of the back of the eye. It's been shown that corneal hysteresis is related to optic nerve changes in the back of the eye that are consistent with development or progression of glaucoma, and it's been shown that the corneal hysteresis measurement is independently predictive of future rate of visual field progression in glaucoma. Now this is a new value, and most folks might not be familiar with what the average value and range is. So in an adult population, the average corneal hysteresis is about 10.5, and the range is somewhere from about 8 to 14. In fact, if you press this button right here on the screen, you'll see a normal distribution of corneal hysteresis values, and you'll see that the average, like I said, is about 10.5, and in this particular example, we have a patient with high corneal hysteresis, measurements of 13.3 and 14.0. High hysteresis is good, low hysteresis is bad. So it's low hysteresis that has been shown consistently to be associated with or predictive of future visual field loss in glaucoma. But don't forget about intraocular pressure, still a very important risk factor. And in fact, you should consider these two parameters together. If you have low corneal hysteresis and high intraocular pressure, that's a particularly bad scenario. So look at all the values on the screen and consider the interplay between these two parameters for clinical decision making. Now, corneal hysteresis, because it provides such powerful information and because there's so much evidence in the literature of its clinical utility, now has its own Medicare reimbursement code, and that's CPT code 92145. Now, there's different Medicare jurisdictions in the United States, and of course there's lots of different private payers. Some payers will pay, some payers will not, and some payers will pay different amounts. So to fully understand billing for corneal hysteresis, it's best to consult your billing expert. So let's discuss printing and clearing of the data or exporting the data to an electronic medical record system. If you're done making a series of measurements on a patient and you simply want to delete them, there's an icon on the screen right here that looks like a trash can, and if you press that, the measurements are gone. If you want to print the measurements to the printer paper on the instrument, here's the print icon all the way over here. Now, if your instrument is connected to an EMR system through the RS-232 port on the side of the instrument, this print button here will print and export the data at the same time. If you don't want to print the paper, you can go into the setup menu, turn the printer off, and then this button here will simply function as an export button. I think it's worth talking about exporting the data for a moment. There's lots of different EMR systems out there. Most of them at this point in time don't have a field for corneal hysteresis, and so you need to work with your EMR company to try and find a place to put the corneal hysteresis measurement or request that they create a field for that. And we at Reichert are working on that with the EMR companies as well. The other thing to talk about related to EMR is the IOP measurement. The default IOP measurement that will be exported is our corneal compensated IOP-CC measurement. So if you have an IOP field in your EMR software, that's the value that will populate that field. Some EMR softwares have corneal thickness based IOP adjustment algorithms built into them. Or some practitioners take the IOP measurement and try to adjust it for corneal thickness. Adjusting pressure for corneal thickness has been discredited, shouldn't be done. If your EMR software does this, you want to make sure that you somehow disable that function because IOP-CC is already compensated for corneal properties. No additional adjustments need to be performed. I think it's also worth mentioning here that this instrument has a sleep mode. If you walk away from the device and leave these values on the screen, after 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever you have it set on, the screen will go to sleep. When you wake the instrument up by touching the screen, if you've left data on the screen, it's going to tell you need to print or clear this information. And that's built in as a safety function so that you don't sit another patient down in front of the instrument, take a measurement, and then begin averaging their measurements with the previous patient's measurements. One of the questions we get asked frequently is, why does the IOP value from this device differ from the IOP I'm getting on my Goldmann tonometer or my other method of tonometry? So let's talk about that for a moment. The IOP-CC measurement, if you recall, is specifically designed to be less dependent on corneal properties, so it's reasonable to expect that that pressure measurement might read differently from Goldmann in a large percentage of cases. So let's talk about the IOP-G measurement, however. The IOP-G measurement is supposed to be essentially a Goldmann equivalent, and dozens of clinical studies have concluded that the IOP-G measurement from this device is highly correlated with actual Goldmann tonometry measurements. But correlation does not constitute 100% agreement. In fact, no two tonometers will ever read exactly the same on any particular patient's eye in all cases. So if you see small differences between this IOP-G value and the Goldmann measurement in your practice, that should be considered normal. And you would expect to see that this measurement will agree with Goldmann tonometry plus or minus 2 or 3 millimeters of mercury in a large majority of cases. Now there's always going to be some examples where this device doesn't agree with the Goldmann, and it might be by a considerable amount. And that's usually attributed to perhaps postural changes in the patient. Don't forget, Goldmann is a very subjective method of tonometry. Two different Goldmann operators will give you two different answers as to what the pressure is in any particular patient's eye at the same point in time. When a patient moves positions, changes rooms, there's lots of different variables that come into play here, lots of opportunity for actual pressure changes to occur. And also, no two tonometers are affected by the cornea in the same way, and there's instances such as corneal edema, as an example, where the Goldmann tonometer is going to significantly underestimate the pressure, and our IOP-G measurement just doesn't behave in the same manner. So, if you're seeing differences between IOP-G and Goldmann tonometry in some patients, even if it's a large disagreement on occasion, that should be considered normal. If you're seeing an offset, for example, if your Goldmann's always 4 millimeters higher than the IOP-G or 4 millimeters lower than the IOP-G, and it's happening in the vast majority of your patients, well, that's unusual. The direction of the agreement or disagreement between Goldmann and IOP-G should be quite random, and it should also be fairly small in most of your patients. So if you're seeing an offset, if you're seeing a large offset between IOP-G and another tonometer in your practice, perhaps one of those two devices needs calibration or service. If you suspect it's the ocular response analyzer, call Reicher Technical Support and we'll begin discussing the best way to address that concern for you. Another frequent question we get is related to asymmetry between the two eyes, particularly with the IOP measurements. Some people will say, well, I always get the same value in the two eyes on my patient with a Goldmann tonometer, and with this device sometimes I get 2 millimeters of difference, 4 millimeters of difference, 5 millimeters of difference between the two eyes. Why is that? The answer is twofold. First of all, it's important to understand that this measurement happens very rapidly. The measurement is over in 25 milliseconds. And this is at random to the ocular pulse. So every time the heart beats, there's a small pressure change in the eye. On average, that pressure change is about 2.5 millimeters, but in some patients, it's as high as 6 millimeters. So it's possible if you measure one eye and then measure the other eye, that you catch one eye at the peak and one eye at the trough of the cardiac cycle, and this can cause an actual pressure change. And because this measurement is so rapid, it captures that actual pressure change. So you're looking at a difference that really occurred due to the ocular pulse. If you think this might be the case, go ahead and make multiple measurements, and the intelligent averaging system should average out those ocular pulse related pressure changes. Another possibility is that, remember, Goldmann is subjective. The clinician decides what the pressure is with a Goldmann tonometer based on their experience and their technique. But two different Goldmann operators are going to give two different answers in many cases for the same patient eye at the same point in time. And so when you measure a patient with a Goldmann tonometer and you get 16 in one eye, guess what the pressure is going to be in the second eye? So this subjectivity of Goldmann tonometry has lulled clinicians into a false sense of IOP symmetry between the two eyes over the years. But what we've learned in recent studies, including implantable pressure transducer studies in primates and other things of that nature, is that the intraocular pressure fluctuates much more dramatically and also very rapidly than we have previously appreciated. So it's not unlikely to actually have a pressure difference between the two eyes. Could be related to the ocular pulse, or it could actually be a pressure difference between the two eyes. Look for good waveform scores, and if you see an asymmetry that's concerning to you, make multiple measurements to try to average out those pressure fluctuations. If you wind up with a 4 millimeter difference between the pressure in the two eyes, that's what it is. Users often ask, does the ocular response analyzer require routine calibration or routine service? And the answer is no, not unless something goes wrong. However, the instrument does require routine cleaning. And as a matter of fact, every 30 days, a reminder will pop up on the screen saying, hey, you should clean some optical surfaces and the air tube on this instrument. The waveform score is actually a good indicator of whether or not you need cleaning. If all of a sudden one day you notice that your waveform scores are lower on average than they usually are, or if you're having trouble obtaining good waveform scores on patients, it could be because the optical surfaces on the instrument are becoming opaque. Every time you measure a patient, some tear film will spray on some of these surfaces, and over time and lots of patients, those surfaces begin to get dirty and need to be cleaned off. So your waveform scores start to go down, probably a good time to clean the instrument. If cleaning doesn't resolve the low waveform score condition and you're positive that you've cleaned the surfaces properly, then maybe it's time to call Reichert. You can look up the contact for technical support on our website and discuss this with the technical support representative at Reichert to see if the machine may be in need of some service. When you think it's time to clean the instrument, I'm going to show you how to do that. You simply touch the menu icon here, and you're going to see all the way down the screen, almost at the bottom, there's a cleaning procedure button. Press that button, and that's going to take you into the cleaning mode. It's going to show you which surfaces need to be cleaned. This is also in your user manual, which I advise you to consult. And when you're ready to make the cleaning, you simply press this checkbox right here. It's going to drive the head forward, make those surfaces easier for you to clean. Now the instrument comes along with a little cleaning kit. We ship you a package of long-handled cotton swabs that you can use to clean some of the windows on the instrument, and we ship some pipe cleaners that can be used to clean the air tube on the instrument. In addition, we ship it with an extra forehead rest pad. If the forehead rest on the instrument becomes too dirty and just doesn't look good anymore and you can't clean it, this just pulls off and goes back on with no adhesive necessary or anything else. Now let me show you how to clean these surfaces. There's two windows on the outside here. These are the alignment windows, and those need to be cleaned, and you can use alcohol to clean any of these surfaces because they're all glass. You're not going to harm them. Inside here, closer to the center of the instrument, there are two small windows, and they're behind this plastic cover, and that's what you need to use these long-handled cotton swabs to clean. And then right here in the center, this is the actual air tube, and that's what you use the pipe cleaner to clean. So let's go ahead and conduct the cleaning. I like to just use alcohol wipes to clean the alignment windows on the outside. So just grab yourself some isopropyl alcohol, wipe those windows off, get all the tear film and any other dust or anything that's on there, and then use a lint-free cloth like a Kim wipe or something of that nature to dry any residue off so that you don't get any haze. Those surfaces need to be mirror-like, so you want to inspect them closely after you've cleaned them. If you need to use a pen light or a cell phone light to get a good look at them, please do that. Then when it's time to clean the applanation detection windows, you're going to take your cotton swab, you're going to moisten this with some alcohol, and you're going to go right inside there and just move it around, roll it back and forth, and make sure you get everything off of that glass. I use a second dry cotton swab then to dry the surface and make sure again that there's no residue or haze. These are very important windows. This is where the signal comes off of the eye, so you want to look in there with a pen light or a cell phone light and make sure that those surfaces are clean and lint free. Then you're going to go ahead and do that on the other window over here, same procedure. Finally, for the air tube itself, that's what the pipe cleaners are for. You're going to take a pipe cleaner and you're going to stick it straight down the air tube all the way until you feel it stop very gently. There's a lens at the back there. Try not to contact the lens too hard. And then move the pipe cleaner in and out a few times. This is scrubbing the inside of the air tube, and now you're done. You're going to go around to the back of the instrument. You're going to say, I'm finished cleaning. There's a little check button, and that's going to fire the air puff 3 times to make sure it blows any lint or debris out of the air tube, and retract the head back to its home position, and now you're ready to measure again. The Ocular Response Analyzer has some optional laptop software that you might be interested in. Researchers and clinicians who publish clinical studies might want to look at the measurement signal in a little bit more detail, and there's a bunch of parameters, 38 different waveform parameters that are in the export file that are very interesting to look at. You can download the software from our website, Reichert.com, go to the Ocular Response Analyzer page, and then you're going to need a key code to unlock the software and begin using it. Contact Reichert customer service or technical support to ask them about obtaining a key code for a small additional charge. So there's about 38 different parameters that you can export into a spreadsheet, and these parameters describe the shape change of the cornea in a lot more detail, and they may be very interesting to look at in particular corneal conditions or other instances. If you look in the literature, you'll find dozens of publications about these waveform parameters.
Since introducing the original non-contact tonometer in 1972, Reichert has led the market in tonometer innovation and established itself as a pioneer in corneal biomechanics and corneal hysteresis. Reichert Ocular Response Analyzer G3 Auto Tonometer with corneal hysteresis, proudly made at our world headquarters in Buffalo, New York, USA by Reichert Technologies.